Jake Morrison stood at the window of the space station and watched the alien ships arrive. He had been Earth's top diplomat for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The ships looked like they were made of crystal and light. They moved through space without making any sound that human ears could hear. "They're beautiful," said Lisa Rodriguez. She was the captain of the human exploration ship that had brought Jake's team to this meeting. "But something feels wrong about them." Jake nodded. He felt it too. The alien ships were too perfect, too clean. They looked like they had never been in a real fight. That worried him more than he wanted to admit. Dr. Kevin Barnes was studying readings on his computer. He was the best scientist Earth had for understanding alien life. "Their biosignatures are strange," he said. "It's like they're not entirely natural anymore." 3 days ago, these aliens had sent a message to Earth. They called themselves the Zephyrian Collective. They said they wanted to meet with human leaders to discuss joining their galactic community. It sounded like good news. Humanity had been alone in space for so long, but Jake's gut told him this meeting would not go the way Earth hoped. The space station's door opened with a soft hiss. The aliens walked in, and Jake had to work hard not to step back. They were tall and thin with skin that looked like living glass. Their leader wore robes that seemed to be made of light itself. "I am Vexathari," the alien said. Its voice sounded like music, but cold music. "I speak for the collective. We welcome humanity to this gathering." Jake stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Ambassador Jake Morrison. I represent Earth and all human colonies. We are honored to meet you." Vexathari's head tilted in a way that might have been a nod. "We have watched your species for some time. You show promise. The collective wishes to offer you membership in our community." "That sounds wonderful," Jake said carefully. "What would membership involve?" "Peace," Vexathari said. "No more war, no more violence, no more pain. We will help your species evolve beyond such primitive needs." Lisa frowned. "Evolve how?" Vexathari turned its attention to her. "Your species is too aggressive, too unpredictable. We will help you change this. Small genetic adjustments, brain modifications, nothing painful. When we are done, your people will be happy and peaceful forever." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "You want to change what we are?" "We want to help you become better," Vexathari said. "We have guided 47 species through this process. All are grateful. All are content. All serve the greater good of the collective." Dr. Barnes spoke up. "What happened to their original cultures? Their art, their music, their individual personalities?" "Such things cause conflict," Vexathari replied. "The collective provides all that any being could need. Individual desires only create suffering." Jake looked at his team. Lisa's hand was resting near her weapon. Kevin was typing rapidly on his computer, probably recording everything. The other human diplomats looked as worried as Jake felt. "We would need time to consider this offer," Jake said. "Our people value their freedom to choose." "Choice is an illusion that causes pain," Vexathari said. "But we understand young species cling to such concepts. You will have time to see the wisdom of our offer. However, time is limited." "How limited?" Jake asked. "Your colonies are far from here. Our fleet could reach them in 6 months. If you have not accepted our guidance by then, we will be forced to provide it anyway. Resistance only makes the process more difficult." The room went silent. Jake felt like ice water was running through his veins. This was not an offer. This was a threat. "I see," Jake said slowly. "And if we refuse entirely?" Vexathari's crystalline features showed no emotion. "No species has refused entirely. The collective always grows. Sometimes the process is gentle. Sometimes it is not. The choice, for now, is yours." Behind Vexathari, other aliens had entered the room. Jake noticed they all moved in exactly the same way. They all stood at exactly the same angle. They all had the same empty look in their eyes. Dr. Barnes had noticed it too. "Those other species you mentioned," he said. Where are they now? They serve the collective, Vexathari said. They are content. They are useful. They are part of something greater than themselves. But where are they? Kevin pressed. Vexathari gestured to the other aliens in the room. They are here. They are everywhere the collective reaches. They are no longer burdened by the pain of individual existence. Jake understood now. Those other aliens weren't allies of the Zephyrians. They were victims, conquered peoples who had been changed so much they were no longer themselves. I think this meeting is over, Jake said. Think carefully, Ambassador Morrison, Vexathari said. We offer peace. We offer contentment. We offer an end to the struggles that plague your kind. In 6 months, we will return for your answer. Choose wisely. The aliens left as silently as they had come. Jake and his team stood in the empty room, trying to process what had just happened. They're going to invade, Lisa said. This wasn't a diplomatic meeting. This was a warning. Worse, Kevin said, looking at his computer. I've been analyzing the genetic data they shared. Every one of those allied species shows signs of massive genetic modification. They've been turned into something else entirely. Jake stared out the window at the departing alien ships. We need to get back to Earth. We need to prepare for war. Will anyone believe us? Lisa asked. They'll have to, Jake said, because in 6 months the collective is coming whether we're ready or not. As their ship prepared to leave the station, Jake sent an emergency message to Earth. The message was simple. First contact made. Invasion imminent. Prepare for war. Humanity's peaceful expansion into space was about to end. The real test was just beginning. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the final collective stronghold burn. 5 years had passed since he first met the aliens as Earth's peaceful diplomat. Now he commanded the largest liberation fleet in galactic history, and the creatures that had once threatened humanity were nothing but memories. Admiral, Captain Lisa Rodriguez called from her position at the tactical station. We're receiving surrender signals from the last collective outposts. The parasitic network has been completely destroyed. Jake nodded, but he felt no satisfaction in victory. The war had shown him truths about the universe that he wished he had never learned. The collective had been consuming civilizations for millions of years before they ever encountered humanity. Countless species had been enslaved, absorbed, or destroyed without anyone to help them. That would never happen again. Not while humanity existed. Dr. Amy Foster appeared on the main screen from her laboratory ship. She had spent the final year of the war working on something more important than weapons. Jake, we've finished analyzing the genetic archives from all the collective worlds. The numbers are staggering. How many species? Jake asked. Over 12,000 documented civilizations. Some destroyed completely, others preserved as genetic templates or enslaved minds. We have enough data to restore most of them, but it will take centuries of work. Jake looked out at the fleet surrounding his ship. Human vessels flew alongside ships crewed by dozens of freed species. The Vorthak warriors who had been enslaved for 8,000 years. The Keelian scientists who had been forced to build weapons for their conquerors. The Zephyrian rebels who had helped humanity from the beginning. They were all free now, but freedom was only the beginning. Dr. Foster, Jake said, how long before we can begin the restoration process? We're already starting, Amy replied. The first clone bodies will be ready in 6 months. We'll begin with species that have living representatives to help guide the process. But Jake, we need to talk about something else. The deep archives. Jake frowned. What about them? Amy's expression grew troubled. The collective kept records, going back millions of years. They weren't the only parasitic network in the universe. There are others in distant galaxies still consuming civilizations. Some of them are much older and more powerful than anything we faced here. The bridge fell silent. Jake felt a familiar weight settling on his shoulders. The weight of responsibility. Of choices that would affect billions of beings across the universe. And show me, he said. The main screen filled with star maps showing distant galaxies. Red zones marked areas where collective transmission logs indicated the presence of other parasitic networks. The scale was enormous. Their home galaxy was just one small part of a universe filled with predators that fed on intelligent life. There, Amy said, pointing to a cluster of galaxies. According to the archives, this network has been active for 50 million years. They've consumed thousands of galaxies. And there are others, some even older. Captain Brad Thompson's voice came over the communicator from his exploration ship. Admiral, we've been monitoring subspace transmissions from those distant galaxies. The signals are getting stronger. I think they know what happened here. Jake understood immediately. Humanity's war against the collective had sent shockwaves across the universe. Other parasitic networks now knew that somewhere in the cosmos, there was a species capable of fighting back. They would either investigate or run. Neither option was good for the free peoples of the galaxy. General Robert Hayes to Admiral Morrison, came another voice over the communicator. Sir, I'm receiving reports from our deep space monitoring stations. We're detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of the Andromeda Galaxy. Something big is coming this way. Jake made a decision that would define humanity's role in the universe for millennia to come. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Morrison. Prepare for departure. We're leaving home. Sir? Lisa asked. The other networks know about us now, Jake explained. They'll either come here to destroy us, or they'll run to even more distant galaxies and keep enslaving species there. Either way, the only solution is to hunt them down before they can act. Dr. Jennifer Bell appeared on screen from the medical ship where she had been working with freed alien survivors. Admiral, many of the restored species want to join the hunt. They've seen what freedom looks like and they want to help spread it to others. And the genetic restoration project? Jake asked. We'll continue it as we travel, Jennifer said. Mobile laboratories, clone facilities, whatever it takes. Every ship in this fleet can become a restoration center. We'll bring back extinct civilizations while we hunt down their killers. Over the following months, the Terran Federation transformed itself from a defensive alliance into something the universe had never seen before, a galactic liberation force dedicated to hunting parasitic networks wherever they existed. The fleet that departed for Andromeda was enormous. Human ships formed the core, but they were joined by vessels from every species the collective had ever enslaved. Each freed race brought their own knowledge, technology, and burning desire for justice. Colonel Peter Grant commanded the advanced scouts who would locate enemy networks. Dr. Sam Mitchell led the weapons development teams that created new tools for fighting biological civilizations. Sarah Kim coordinated communications between dozens of different species, many of whom were speaking their native languages for the first time in centuries. As the fleet traveled through the void between galaxies, they carried out their dual mission, liberation and restoration. They would hunt down every parasitic network in the universe, but they would also bring back every species those networks had destroyed. The journey to Andromeda took 2 years. When they arrived, they found a galaxy in the final stages of consumption. Ancient parasitic networks had turned entire star systems into biological processing centers. Billions of enslaved minds powered massive organic computers that coordinated the absorption of the last free worlds. The enemy they faced was older and more powerful than the collective had ever been. These parasites had perfected their techniques over 50 million years of conquest. They had absorbed so many species that their biological technology was beyond anything humanity had encountered, but they had made the same mistake as their younger cousins. They had underestimated the species they were trying to absorb. The war in Andromeda lasted 3 years and involved fighting on scales that dwarfed anything from the previous conflict. Entire star systems became battlefields. Living planets fought against fleets of liberated species. The very fabric of space was torn apart by weapons that used the quantum consciousness of enslaved beings as ammunition. But humanity and their allies had learned something important during their first war. They were not fighting to conquer or to destroy. They were fighting to liberate, and that gave them a strength that no parasitic network could understand or counter. Every victory brought new allies as enslaved species remembered freedom. Every freed mind became a warrior in the cause of liberation. The network that had ruled Andromeda for 50 million years crumbled in 5 years before an enemy that grew stronger with every battle. When the last parasitic stronghold fell, Jake stood once again on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at a liberated galaxy. But he knew the work was far from over. "Dr. Foster," he said, "how many more galaxies show signs of parasitic networks?" Amy's voice was tired but determined. "At least 40 that we can detect from here. Probably more beyond our sensor range." Jake smiled grimly. "Then we keep hunting." The message that went out to all ships in the Liberation Fleet was simple. Prepare for the next galaxy. We hunt until every slave is free. Humanity had evolved from a peaceful species seeking their place among the stars into something far more important. They had become the universe's immune system, hunting down the parasites that fed on intelligent life. The collective had dismissed their warning about the consequences of enslaving humanity. They had learned too late that humans, once roused to anger, would hunt their enemies to the very end of existence itself. And in the deep space between galaxies, human ships carried a message to every enslaved being in the universe. Freedom was coming, backed by hunters who would never stop, never surrender, and never show mercy to those who stole the liberty of others. The hunt had become eternal, and humanity would not rest until every mind in the universe was free to choose its own destiny. 2 years had passed since the aliens took Earth's moon. General Patricia Cole crouched in the ruins of what used to be Chicago and watched enemy patrols march through the streets. The aliens controlled the cities, but they could not control the humans who refused to surrender. Patricia commanded the resistance from hidden bases scattered across the planet. Her soldiers lived in sewers, abandoned buildings, and underground tunnels. They struck fast and disappeared before the aliens could respond. It was not a war of big battles anymore. It was a war of shadows and whispers. "General," whispered Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Brooks, crawling up beside her, "Dr. Sam Mitchell has finished his new weapon. He wants to test it on that patrol down there." Patricia looked through her scope at the alien soldiers below. Half of them used to be human. She could tell by the way they moved. The collective had processed them, changed their minds, but something was still wrong with them. They twitched. They looked around nervously. Even as slaves, humans caused problems for their masters. "Tell Sam to proceed," she said. Dr. Mitchell had spent 2 years studying captured alien technology. He was brilliant, but the war had changed him. Before the invasion, he had been a gentle scientist who wanted to cure diseases. Now he built weapons designed to kill living ships and free enslaved minds. Sam's latest invention was a sonic weapon that disrupted the quantum connections the collective used to control their slaves. If it worked, the processed humans in that patrol would remember who they really were. The weapon fired with a sound like breaking glass. The effect was immediate. Half the alien patrol stopped walking and began screaming. They tore at their heads, fighting against the implants that controlled them. Some collapsed. Others began attacking their alien handlers. "It works," Nathan said, "but they look like they're in terrible pain." "Freedom hurts when you've been a slave for 2 years, Patricia said. "Help them." Her soldiers emerged from hiding to support the freed humans. Most were too damaged to be saved, but a few could still remember their names. One of them was Sarah Kim, who used to be a language expert before the aliens took her. "I remember," Sarah gasped as Patricia's medic treated her wounds. "I remember everything they made me do. General, I can help you. I learned their language while I was connected to their network. I know how they communicate." That was the break Patricia had been waiting for. With Sarah's help, the resistance could finally understand alien transmissions and plan better attacks. But their biggest victory came from an unexpected source. During a raid on a processing facility, Nathan's team rescued not just humans, but aliens from other conquered species. One of them was Kethvar, who used to be a lieutenant in the collective before something went wrong with his programming. "The humans are different," Kethvar explained in broken English. "Other species, when processed, lose all resistance, become perfect servants. Humans keep fighting even after their minds are changed. The collective is confused, angry. Why are we different?" Patricia asked. Kethavar's 4 eyes looked sad. My people were warriors once, proud, strong. When Collective took us, we fought for 3 days, then accepted fate. Humans have been fighting for 2 years and get stronger. This should not be possible. Patricia smiled grimly. We're stubborn. It's what we do. The resistance grew larger every day. Sam's sonic weapons freed more processed humans, and each freed slave brought knowledge about alien operations. Sarah learned to decode their communications, revealing plans for new processing centers and troop movements. The biggest breakthrough came when Nathan led a desperate mission to capture an alien command node. The mission was supposed to be impossible. The command nodes were heavily guarded and located in the heart of enemy territory. But Nathan had learned something important about fighting the Collective. They expected logical tactics, predictable strategies. Human warfare was neither logical nor predictable. Instead of attacking the command center directly, Nathan's team spent 3 weeks kidnapping minor alien officers from different locations. To the Collective, it looked like random raids. But Nathan was forcing them to concentrate their forces around important targets, including the command center. When the aliens pulled troops away from outlying areas to protect the center, Nathan attacked those outlying areas instead. While the enemy was looking one way, he struck from another direction entirely. The command node was actually a living creature the size of a building. It pulsed with bioelectric energy and was connected to the alien fleet in orbit. Nathan's team had to fight their way inside its body like attacking an infection. The battle inside the creature was horrifying. Walls of living tissue tried to crush them. Acid burned through their equipment. Immune systems that were part machine and part biology hunted them through corridors of bone and metal. But humans had one advantage the Collective never expected. They could adapt to situations that should have been impossible. When their weapons failed, they used improvised explosives. When the creature's immune system attacked them, they used its own biological functions against it. Sarah proved to be the key to their success. She could read the creature's bioelectric communications and guide the team to its central brain. The brain was a massive organ that coordinated attacks across 3 star systems. We can't destroy it, Nathan said, looking at the pulsing mass of neural tissue. It's too big. We don't need to destroy it, Sarah said. We just need to give it new orders. Using knowledge gained from her time as a processed slave, Sarah connected herself to the creature's brain. For a terrifying moment, Nathan thought they had lost her to the Collective again. But Sarah was stronger than the aliens expected. Instead of being controlled by the brain, she began controlling it. Through the command creature, she sent false orders to alien fleets. She rerouted supply ships. She even managed to shut down processing facilities on 6 different worlds. The confusion lasted only 2 hours before the Collective realized what had happened and cut the connections. But in those 2 hours, the Resistance freed over 1 million enslaved beings across human space. More importantly, they proved the Collective could be beaten. Dr. Mitchell's analysis of the captured command node revealed the aliens' greatest weakness. Their entire network depended on quantum entanglement between the minds of enslaved species. If that connection could be permanently disrupted, the Collective would fall apart. We need to build a weapon that can sever quantum neural pathways on a massive scale, Sam explained to the Resistance leadership. Something that can reach their core worlds and break the connections that hold their entire civilization together. How long will it take? Patricia asked. 6 months, maybe 8? And we'll need to get close to their main fleet to deploy it, very close. Then we have a new mission, Patricia said. We're going to take this war to them. But as the Resistance prepared for their most dangerous operation yet, disturbing reports came in from other human worlds. The freed aliens brought stories of thousands of species that had been completely absorbed by the Collective over the centuries. Entire civilizations that had been turned into biological components for alien ships. The war was bigger than just saving humanity. It was about freeing every enslaved mind in the galaxy, and that was exactly the kind of impossible mission that humans specialized in. As Patricia looked at the stars through a hole in her bunker's roof, she made a promise to every species the Collective had ever conquered. The hunt was about to begin, and humanity would not stop until every last slave was free. The aliens had wanted to harvest the human war mind. Instead, they had created something much worse for themselves. They had turned humanity into predators with a cause. Admiral Chris Parker stood on the bridge of his battleship and watched death come from the stars. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison brought his warning back to Earth. 6 months of building ships, training soldiers, and preparing for a war nobody really believed would happen. Now the Zephyrian fleet filled the space around New Austin Colony like a swarm of deadly insects. "How many ships?" Chris asked his lieutenant. "Over 300 that we can count," came the reply. "Maybe more hiding behind the larger ones." Chris had 42 ships. Good ships, with brave crews, but 42 against 300 was not a fight any sane person would take. Unfortunately, sanity was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. "All ships, this is Admiral Parker," he said into his communicator. "Remember what we're fighting for. Every minute we hold them here is another minute for civilians to escape. Make every shot count." The alien ships moved forward like a tide of crystal and light. As they came closer, Chris could see they were not just ships. They were alive. The hulls pulsed like heartbeats. Tentacles and organic weapons sprouted from their sides. It was like fighting a sea of monsters instead of machines. The first human ship to fire was the destroyer Liberty Bell. Its missiles streaked toward the alien fleet and exploded in bright flashes. For a moment, Chris hoped they had done real damage. Then he watched the alien ships heal themselves. The holes in their hulls closed up like wounds in living flesh. Burns faded away as if they had never existed. Within minutes, the damaged ships looked brand new again. "Sir," his weapons officer said, "our missiles aren't working. They just fixed themselves." "Then we get closer," Chris said. "All ships, close to fighting range. If they can heal from far. Away, let's see how they do up close." The human fleet charged forward. It was probably suicide, but Chris would rather die fighting than watch helplessly as the aliens destroyed another colony. The battle was chaos. Human ships fired everything they had while alien vessels wrapped around them like serpents. The aliens didn't just want to destroy the human ships, they wanted to capture them. Chris watched in horror as the cruiser New York was swallowed whole by an alien ship that opened like a giant mouth. Through his communicator, he could hear the crew screaming as something happened to them inside the alien vessel. "Admiral," his communications officer shouted. "We're getting a transmission from Commander Helen Wright at the research station." Helen's voice crackled through the static. "Admiral Parker, the aliens aren't just attacking the military targets. They're taking civilians. They have some kind of processing facility on the surface. You need to see this." The transmission switched to video feed from Helen's helmet camera. Chris felt sick as he watched what the aliens were doing to captured humans. They were strapping people to tables and doing something to their brains. The humans on the tables were screaming at first, but then they went quiet. When they stood up, they moved like the other aliens, empty, controlled. "They're not killing us," Helen continued. "They're changing us, turning us into them. Admiral, you can't let them take any more people." Chris made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "All ships with orbital weapons target the processing facility. We can't let them take any more of our people." "Sir," his weapons officer said quietly, "there are still humans down there." "I know," Chris said. "Fire." The missiles fell like rain on the alien facility. When the explosions cleared, the processing center was gone. So were the humans inside it, both the captured ones and the ones being changed. But at least they died as themselves. The space battle continued for 6 more hours. When it was over, Chris had 12 ships left out of 42. The alien fleet had lost maybe 20 vessels, and even those were probably repairing themselves somewhere in the dark. But the civilians had escaped. Almost 50,000 people were now on ships heading deeper into human space, carrying the news of what the collective really was. Dr. Amy Foster was waiting for Chris when his damaged fleet limped back to Earth. She had been studying alien technology captured from the first encounters, trying to find weaknesses. "The ships are definitely alive," she told him in the briefing room. "But they're not natural life, they're engineered, built, and I think I know how." She showed him pictures on her computer. Each alien ship has a brain at its center. But the brain isn't Zephyrian. It's from one of the species they conquered. They take intelligent beings and turn them into living ship computers. Chris stared at the images. Every ship has a slave at its heart? That's right. And that gives us a weapon. If we can free the enslaved minds controlling those ships, the vessels become helpless. How do we do that? I'm working on it, Amy said. But first we need to understand how deep this goes. Captain Tony Miller volunteered for a stealth mission to one of their facilities. He should be reporting back soon. 3 days later, Tony's report came in. It was worse than anyone had imagined. They don't just want our planets, Tony explained to the emergency council. They want us, specifically us. They're fascinated by human creativity and our ability to adapt. They call it the war mind. They think if they can harvest that and add it to their collective, they'll be unbeatable. Harvest how? Asked General Robert Hayes. They don't just change our brains, Tony said. They copy them. Every human they process becomes a template they can use to create more soldiers, more ship pilots, more workers. One human can become 1,000 alien servants. The room fell silent. Chris felt a cold weight in his stomach. How many humans have they taken? From all the colonies they've hit so far, maybe 2 million people. Which means they now have templates for 2 million human minds, Amy said. They could build an army of human-based aliens. General Hayes stood up. Then we stop them here. We make our stand at Earth. With what? Chris asked. We barely have 100 ships left, and they have thousands, plus however many human template soldiers they've built. Then we go underground, Hayes said. We fight them the way humans have always fought when the odds were against them. We become guerrillas. We make them pay for every inch of ground. As if summoned by his words, alarms began blaring throughout the building. Everyone rushed to the windows and looked up at the sky. The Zephyrian fleet had arrived at Earth. Thousands of organic ships blotted out the sun like a swarm of insects. As they watched, smaller ships began descending toward the planet's surface. It's starting, Chris said. But as the first alien ships landed and disgorged their troops, Chris noticed something odd. Some of the alien soldiers moved wrong. They stumbled. They looked around with confusion instead of purpose. Amy, he said, look at those troops. Do they look normal to you? Amy studied the landing forces through binoculars. No, she said slowly. They look like they're fighting their own programming, like something inside them is trying to break free. The human templates, Tony said. They're not as obedient as the collective expected. Even after being processed, some part of the human spirit is still fighting back. General Hayes smiled grimly. Then let's give that fighting spirit some help. If they want to learn what the human war mind can do, let's show them. As alien forces spread across Earth's surface, pockets of human resistance began forming. The real war was about to begin, and humanity was going to fight it in ways the collective had never seen before. The aliens had dismissed the warning about human nature. Now they were about to learn why that was a mistake. Admiral Rachel Davis watched her new warship tear through space toward the collective's home system. 3 years of fighting had changed everything. The ship under her command used alien biotechnology, but it was built with human improvements. The collective had never imagined. The vessel was called Vengeance, and it was hungry for battle. Admiral, called Captain Brad Thompson from the bridge of his own ship. We're detecting massive collective forces ahead. Looks like they're trying to make a stand at their core world. Rachel smiled coldly. Good. We've been hunting them across the galaxy for months. Time to finish this. The human fleet had grown larger than anyone thought possible. Ships crewed by humans and freed aliens filled the space around them. Dr. Mitchell's quantum virus had worked better than expected. Entire star systems had been cut off from the collective's control network, and the freed populations had joined humanity's war of liberation. But this battle would be different. The collective had gathered its remaining forces to protect their most important world. They would fight with the desperation of a cornered animal. All ships, this is Admiral Davis, Rachel announced. Today we end this war. Every species they enslaved, every mind they stole, every civilization they destroyed. Today we get justice for all of them. The collective fleet was enormous. Thousands of living ships formed a barrier around their homeworld. But Rachel had learned something important during the war. The bigger the enemy formation, the more chaos human tactics could create. Colonel Peter Grant commanded the special operations teams that had been terrorizing collective forces for months. His Ghost Protocol attacks had driven the aliens to paranoia. They never knew when or where humans would strike next because human tactics followed no pattern the collective could understand. "Peter," Rachel said over the communicator, "take your teams and hit their command ships. Make them think we're attacking from 12 different directions at once." "Understood, Admiral. Let's make them afraid of the dark." Peter's ships vanished into stealth mode and began appearing around the collective fleet like ghosts. They would attack one formation, disappear, then appear somewhere completely different. To the ordered minds of the collective, it looked like humanity had ships everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Meanwhile, Dr. Jennifer Bell led the freed alien crews in their own assault. The collective had enslaved dozens of species over the millennia, but they had never expected those species to work together against them. Bell had spent months learning to coordinate attacks between races that had completely different fighting styles. "The Vorthax squadrons are ready to attack from the left," Jennifer reported. "The Keelian fighters will hit them from above. The Zephyrian defectors know their old fleet's weaknesses better than anyone." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships fought with a savage creativity that confused and terrified the collective. Freed alien crews fought with the fury of beings who had spent centuries as slaves. Together, they were unstoppable. Captain Thompson led his ship directly into the heart of the enemy formation. His vessel was surrounded by hundreds of collective ships, but instead of trying to escape, he began broadcasting Dr. Mitchell's quantum virus directly into their communication network. The effect was devastating. Collective ships began turning on each other as their enslaved crews remembered who they really were. Command structures collapsed as processed beings rejected their programming. The ordered fleet became a chaotic battlefield where nobody knew who was friend or enemy. "Brad," Rachel called over the communicator, "get out of there before the whole formation collapses." "Negative, Admiral," Thompson replied. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. They're trying to restart their main control network. If they succeed, they'll regain control of every ship we've freed." Rachel understood immediately. The collective was making one last desperate attempt to reassert control over their escaped slaves. If they succeeded, the war would start all over again. "All ships target the planet," she ordered. "We can't let them restart that network." But as the human fleet moved toward the planet, something unexpected happened. The freed aliens began talking among themselves. Through translators, Rachel could hear fragments of their conversations. They were arguing about something important. Dr. Bell's voice came over the communicator. "Admiral, the freed species are telling me something crucial. That planet isn't just the collective's homeworld. It's where they keep genetic samples of every species they've ever conquered. If we destroy it, we'll be destroying the only chance those extinct civilizations have of being restored." Rachel felt a cold weight in her stomach. How many species? Hundreds, maybe thousands. The collective has been collecting genetic data for millions of years. It's all stored in biological computers on that planet. The tactical situation had suddenly become much more complicated. Rachel needed to stop the collective from restarting their control network, but she couldn't destroy the genetic archives without committing genocide against species that had been extinct for centuries. "New plan," she announced. "We go down to the surface. Ground assault. We take the control centers intact and secure the genetic archives." "Admiral," Peter Grant said, "that's suicide. The planet's surface is covered with defense systems and collective troops." "Then we make it work anyway," Rachel replied. "That's what humans do." The ground assault was brutal. Human Marines and freed alien soldiers fought their way through defense networks that had been built over millions of years. The collective threw everything they had at the invaders, including processed beings from dozens of different species. But the attackers had advantages the collective couldn't counter. Human soldiers adapted to new situations faster than any defense system could respond. Freed aliens knew the weaknesses of their former masters. Most importantly, they were fighting for the freedom of beings they had never met and might never see. The final battle took place in the control center itself. Rachel led a combined team of humans and aliens into the heart of the collective's power. What they found there shocked even veterans of 3 years of war. The control network wasn't just a computer. It was a living system made from the preserved brains of billions of enslaved beings. Every species the collective had ever conquered was represented in that writhing mass of neural tissue. Their minds had been linked together to create a biological supercomputer of unimaginable power. "This is what they really are," said Kethvar, the defector who had helped the resistance from the beginning. "Not conquerors, parasites. They feed on the minds of other species." At the center of the biological network was something even worse. The original collective organisms were revealed to be small, parasitic creatures that had infected other species so long ago they had forgotten their own nature. They weren't even truly intelligent by themselves. They were just biological machines for consuming and controlling other forms of life. "We can't just destroy this," Jennifer said, studying the network. "There are billions of minds trapped in here. Some of them might still be conscious after all these years." "Then we free them," Rachel said. "All of them." Using modified versions of Dr. Mitchell's quantum virus, the assault team began severing the connections that held the network. Together, it was dangerous work. Each freed mind had to be carefully separated from the collective consciousness, without damaging the preserved genetic data. As the network began to collapse, something amazing happened. Voices began speaking in languages that hadn't been heard for thousands of years. Preserved minds that had been trapped in the collective consciousness for centuries were finally able to speak for themselves. Some chose to remain as part of a voluntary network, helping to coordinate the massive task of restoring extinct species. Others chose to be transferred to new bodies grown from their genetic templates. A few simply chose to rest after eons of enslavement. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had evolved from a peaceful exploration species into the galaxy's most effective predators. But they had become predators with a purpose, hunting down any remaining fragments of the collective and ensuring that no species would ever again face absorption without choice. As Rachel stood on the bridge of her ship and watched restoration teams beginning their work on the planet below, she received a message from Earth. New expeditionary fleets were already being assembled. Ancient Collective. Transmission logs had revealed the locations of other galaxies where similar parasitic networks might exist. The hunt was expanding beyond their home galaxy. Humanity and their freed allies would carry their war of liberation to every corner of the universe, where slaves still waited for freedom. The collective had dismissed humanity's warning about the consequences of their actions. Now they had learned what happened when humans decided to hunt without remorse.